engaging discussion here on Talk Today. We have the excellent company shortly of Dr. Alexandra Borden. And then 1:30 we're going to get into a discussion with attorney Christopher Perry about the proposed national ID consultation process. Back to you, Lynn. We keep shouting and screaming. All right. Take a call. Come to you. All right, let's play. We're going to pause and join us right after this. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's go straight to the phones. Always appreciate you listening and appreciate when you call. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Sterling. How are you?
Excellent. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. When is your first guest coming on? At what time?
We have Dr. Alexandra Borden in our studio momentarily. I know there's some issues with traffic. Apparently, we don't have the valet set up today, for that. It's just, I guess, get closer.
Okay. Sterling, I was in the Republic over the weekend.
Good for you. It's good to get it to good places.
I don't know if anything has been said, but I can't recall hearing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sterling, I was so amazed when I was on the Turtle Farm Road 5:30 Friday evening and see the development that's going on.
Norris Point Road,
that stretch. Yes. Unbelievable. And Sterling continued to drive and went down over the y'all's famous hill. And then I was driving with this lady. She said, downhill very well. I said, yes, I used to work at Cayman Distributor. I was a sales rep for them at some point in time, so I know they'll stay pretty good. And how, the roads are still narrow, and they're increasing in the roads when it comes to the width of them. And some crazy driving, taking the corners very close and all that kind of stuff, and the roads are still narrow. But Sterling, especially there on Northwest Point Road, Sterling, we ain't got no roads coming to Georgetown to that degree for all of these new, I guess they're called investors that is building up all these apartments and so forth down there on Northwest Point Road. Are you all going to be getting what's the boat called the ferry that goes up, that will be crossing from down Northwest Point over to the Royal Pier to bring people down to work and so forth? Because Sterling, it's no way in the world the amount of condos and apartments are being built, especially on that stretch. How are they going to accommodate the road users when those places are, in capacity or whatever you want to call it? And then yesterday went down to Calypso Grill, and there goes another bunch of apartments going down. Sterling, who are we building for? Will your people in West Bay be able to buy one of these apartments or rent one of these apartments?
Those are questions I think that we've asked, and unfortunately we probably thought they were rhetorical questions, and even some of us in the political realm have, reiterated comments that don't necessarily resonate, with the residents. And I think your question now is probably even more timely than ever. But what do we do? Because it seems that we live in a space where we expect increasingly more and more from government. Government needs to find more and more revenue, whether that's through raising taxes or through construction and development, which is a great driver for employment.
Marilyn, I know there's people own these properties, right? Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Nobody out there, please get me wrong. But Sterling, I'm quite sure that they're getting their concession with their bringing in their material and so forth. But then again, what happened to the little average West Bayer who can't probably rent one of those apartments or buy one of their as a sale? You understand? So where is planning and government looking into helping the people of West Bay?
Well, I think
it's heart-wrenching to see what has taken place in West Bay in the last couple of years, because I haven't been driving taxi for almost 5 years. So I have not been on Turtle Farm Road in a long time. I went the opposite on a couple of occasions with a friend of mine is driving out, but never hit the Turtle Farm Road in a long time. And Sterling, I must say that I didn't see any garbage on the side of the road for pickup, which was good. But now yesterday evening, what's the road named when you turn in the four-wheel stop sign to the right? What's that road called?
When you're coming from town and you're making a right?
Town, you make a right. What that road called?
I knew there's Church Street, but we call it West Church now for some reason when we were doing the renaming thing, you know?
That's the street I'm talking about. I didn't get to paying out people yards and fence. I don't know if that was regular garbage or if that was the bags, like the bags that I was using to do and pick up, truck at the island. And there is a couple of them hanging around. And like I said, I'm not sure what it is. If it's regular garbage was put up for this morning to be picked up or what, I don't know. But I must say, all that I have come across in the West Bay area is pretty clean. You understand?
Yeah.
What I have come across. But Sterling, I don't know what to say. I just can't use the right word right now when I see the development that is taking place in West Bay. West Bay going to need a ferry to take their people into town to work if they are working on the 7 Mile and Georgetown. And I'm out of new condos.
Well, I mean, let me ask then two things. One, given that, as I said, there is an increased driver for more construction and development, we've heard both Mr. Saunders, Christopher Saunders, and Mr. McKeever Bush, through what he shared publicly, sponsoring a private members' motion. We need to look at 20, 30-story buildings. There were this proposal for this iconic building. So what's your thoughts on two things, not just increased development, but the notion of, and here you have the deputy premier as well as, the former premier, both championing 20, 30 stories, who knows, 40, 50, maybe 1,000 stories at some point.
Sterling, that needs to be a no-no, because it's not building for the few Caymanians that we have left. We are looking at this high-end people coming here to live in this island or to visit this island. They talking about all the local people that who they want to help. So this 30 and whatever. I saw fireman just the other day, and I said to him, I see you ready for the floor buildings in the Cayman Islands. He said, not really, because I said, are you all equipped? He said, no, the only equipped is going to be the men. The reason why he got in other words, take the training. And they said, he said, a man going to put a 10, 15 floor, and not got the things that he needs to take him up there. He may not come back down alive. You understand? So putting these things in effect to protect our firemen and police officers and everybody there's the workplace and everybody there's something to think about. And
well, your point is, not just the safety and ability for the fire services to safely deal with the building, but then the increased sort of pressures on the infrastructure, the amount of people that will be in the buildings, But this is progress, This
is a lot of bad progress for this small baby island. And Simon, if we don't put our foot down somewhere down the line, I am sorry for the few Caymanians left. And I want to say this before we finish. God, for next to the road down there on Eastern Avenue, that is so sinking that we got to have a sinkhole down there. When they're going to redo that road, I don't know. But it's not a very good road to drive on, believe me. It is sinking, getting lower and lower into the ground. I don't know what the plans are for it, but Sterling, let me tell you something. This island is going to hell in a handbasket. If we are giving free concessions to these investors, and where are the locals going to live, and what are the locals getting out of it? Are they getting the assessment? That's all they're getting from it. But yet, living in a deplorable place or living on our street, and to take them out to go buy a few beers and a couple of cigarettes to ease their mind, and then they right back to square one again tomorrow. Where am I going to live when I get home?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sterling,
Yes,
I think you better start making a road to Wesley, because down there is, I would say, to a degree, it looks like it's even overpopulated. We went to the bakery and got this fancy mackerel store down there. That's where we got the buns from and the cheese, and it was a beautiful store. But the people that was hanging around over there, I'm like, I haven't seen this when Mr. Bergman had it. The crowd, you understand?
Right.
So the population of Wesley is growing rapidly. And who is looking into this now? I don't even know, Sterling. But something needs to be done, because there's no road to drive on.
Well, as you shared, we will go into a break, but one of our listeners has, quite succinctly put, Cayman's success, is a vaccine question, right? But then what's the alternative? And perhaps, as our listener shares, many of us perhaps don't weigh in on this. We leave it for, the powers that be. But what do we do? Well, thank you very much, ma'am, for your input. And maybe it'll cause us to give us some thought as to what we're going to do. All right? We'll pause. We'll take a short break and let that call in a minute. We have a lot to discuss. When we return, the excellent company of Dr. Alexandra Borden will sit with us. 1:30, our guests, as part of a sponsored segment by the Christian Association for Civics and Political Education. We'll welcome attorney Christopher Perry to come in the studio to talk about the National ID consultation process. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Savannah Pharmacy saved my life.
Really? Was it the medication they got you?
No, not this time. I forgot my wife's birthday. They were the perfect place for last-minute shopping.
That's one way to give yourself heart failure. Don't wait last minute for Christmas. Savannah Pharmacy is stocked up for Christmas right now. Gifts for men, women, and children. Home decor, clothes, toys for all ages, fragrances, candles, handbags, and so much more. I was there the other day, and trust me, they'll even wrap all your presents too.
Savannah Pharmacy, a lifesaver in more ways than one.
Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village provides you with more than just prescriptions. Always just around the corner with everything your family needs for this holiday season. WhatsApp your prescription refills to 929-5045.
They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we're introducing the new Boneless Hot Sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go, pure and cleaner.
To all our valued customers, our household special ends on Friday, December 9th. Our standard discount schedule continues on your wearing apparels at our two convenient locations, Savannah Countryside and 337 Eastern Avenue. Drive through, rain or shine. Call 949-7104. That's 949-7104. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good.
Talk today.
but I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. It's an excellent opportunity to sort of close out our year of our monthly Mental Health Matters show. The first Monday, usually, with the weather being what it is, sometimes it gets cold. Dr. Alexandra One, thank you very much, not just for coming again today, but for helping us facilitate this show. I would publicly say without your, not just participation, but your leadership, not only would this show not have been the resounding success, but I think many of our professors, many of our listeners would be as willing to speak publicly, to engage, to seek out help from the public's perspective, to offer help from the professional's perspective, and for us as a community to appreciate that our health is all encompassing. And it's good to have a competent person to bounce ideas off, to confide in. And you know what? It's a healthy society that we do.
Yeah. No, thank you so much to yourself and to Radio Cayman for allowing us to have this space as well. I know everyone who's been on the show always appreciates that we have a lot of people who listen in each month. And of course, the support of the public, taking the time to listen to the show. We've done so much, that's what I was thinking as we're kind of like wrapping up this year, looking back over the years and how far we've come, and that you guys did take a chance on doing a mental health show. I really appreciate. I know I came in the first time in 2014, I believe it was, talking about schizophrenia. That was a World Mental Health Day talk that I was doing that the Business Professional Women's Club actually took on as well. They supported us, government supported us with the luncheon we did for the World Mental Health Day, and then of course you guys gave us the opportunity to come on here and discuss. So I think I really appreciate the support we've had from Radio Cayman over the years.
Well, it's key to us as a community, and I think as I'm reminded, we can leverage technology, not just our own YouTube sites. You can go back on, look for past shows, but you've been very instrumental in through your own website and your own social media. Young people like you to get that message out.
Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah. So people can go back and have a look. They can access resources.
Yeah, we try to keep them up. I've had some brilliant interns over the years. I've got my website up to speed. We've got it at drbodden.com. We've got links to them there from the Radio Cayman YouTube, where, of course, you can listen to all the shows. So that's been really helpful as well, and allowed us to do some really interesting shows as well, without having to do the same main mental health topics over and over, which are all very important, but allowed us to delve into some more interesting or more specialized areas as well.
Yeah. Something I'll say, and I'll ask you to guide me. I've always heard the phrase, I always subscribe to, a little learning is a dangerous thing. And by that, for me, just because you read something, you hear something, it's factual, it's accurate. It's not like the stuff you see on some of the big media places around the world that no longer have credibility. At least in my view, they present this narrative. So take everything with a grain of salt, but verify,
Well, I've always heard it, I know just enough to be dangerous.
That's
how I've heard the term. And that's definitely true. And so when we have covered the more major topics, that's something we always say, disclaimer I give at the beginning of those shows and at the beginning of my classes. Obviously, I still teach at UCCI, and we do abnormal psychology where we cover all kinds of mental illness. You can often relate to things we're talking to, and the idea there is for everyone to be able to understand and empathize. Mental illness is not so far removed from the normal experience. Many of us have either experienced it ourselves, have had a loved one that have experienced it. The numbers for diagnosable difficulties is 1 in 4. So generally, if it's not us, it's one of our friends or family members that have been through it. So the idea is to be able to relate to it, but not to self-diagnose. Right? Even the more major symptoms like hallucinations can come from a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily mean you have schizophrenia.
And this is where I've enjoyed, because for me, I like to know things. Don't always necessarily say that I understand what I read, or if I understood it the first time, maybe it's the 10th time. But learning continually and applying what you learn, but having a resource to go back to even that tried and true tested recipe that we have that's been passed down for generations. It's okay to consult it every now and again, or speak to someone who well, you putting a little too much, of this and that. We need to get into it. But in the Cayman context, the notion that we've seen the discussion of mental health gradually becoming more public for more of us to appreciate that there's importance in having someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Hoping that continues.
Yeah, I do as well. I think that, so when I went off to school, psychology wasn't really a thing. My father, I think, was actually quite nervous about me getting into the field. He was supportive, thankfully. But since coming back, the field has grown in huge ways, with people understanding it, with people accepting it, with people coming out for services. The sheer number of providers that we have here, many, many providers per capita for such a small community, which is great. So, we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of changes. Obviously, still some areas to continue. There was an article this morning on Dr. Lockhart with the long-term mental health facility and how that's still needed. Alex Panton Foundation is still working on the adolescent hub. But outpatient services, we've got a very rich mental health and allied health community for support here that's available. And I really think that while there is still stigma and misunderstanding within the community, that it's a lot less than it was.
I think a lot of more people are understanding that just because you're talking to someone, maybe you have X sessions that you set up, every day, every week, whatever that is. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. For me, that means that you're actually wise and prudent to go and talk to someone. We do it with our personal health.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you go talk to a nutritionist, like you go talk to like a financial consultant, right? A wealth manager, I think they call them now. So, and there's all kinds of coaches out there. Yeah. But it definitely, it can be helpful if there's something going on. It can just be helpful if you want to learn more about yourself. Yeah. It can be really nice to have someone who's in your corner, on your team, just there for you. You can go in, you can share ideas without being judged, and get honest feedback. Sometimes it can be difficult. Friends and family have vested interest in what's going on. They already have their own opinions, which is fine. And friends and family, that's what they do. But it can be nice to have someone separate that you can go and talk to about things, whether it's because there's something scary or concerning going on, or just to have a space to talk and deal with things and help you to feel more in control of your life and make your life better, to thrive in different ways.
It would, to me, seem helpful that even if it's just an incident where you're trying to figure something out, that informed, objective, impartial, neutral sort of voice that tells you want your friend to encourage you, but if you're just as an example, as good as it may be, you're diligently exercising, you think you're eating properly, you're doing all the things, but you're not seeing any noticeable change. And your friends say, "Hey, you're looking great," and you're thinking, "But this pants,
Thanks, guys."
they're not helping you, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you're doing it on your own. But if you go to someone who knows a little bit more, again, safe, nurturing environment that is equipped. You see the transformation.
Well, and that's where I think that, therapy is different from talking to friends and family, because of confidentiality. So things that are discussed in the therapy room won't be discussed anywhere else, unless, of course, you're going to hurt yourself or someone else, or if there's concerns about child abuse. Those are the 3 limitations. But in general, it's not going to go anywhere else, right? And actually, sometimes my friends call me with questions, and I say, I can give you my honest opinion, or I can give you my therapist's advice, or my therapist approach, because a therapist's opinion should really help you to find your own answers. As a friend, I have my own opinions and my own thoughts over whether you should get back with him, if you should really have that 3rd serving of whatever it is. But as a therapist, you help them to find their own answers. And it may not necessarily be what I would personally choose for myself, but it has to be what's right for them. And we spend a lot of time in our training to be able to have that empathy and to help people find their own answers. There's something we call the Socratic questioning, to help them figure out what's right for them. Obviously, if there's something going on and I as a therapist really have concerns, we're going to talk about that. But the goal really is to help you learn about yourself, make the right decisions, the best decisions for you, and to help you learn that process yourself, so you're not in therapy for forever. So it's different in several levels in that way.
Can I ask if it's okay? Because I think that is something that many of us may labor under that perception that you go to the therapist for the therapist to tell you what to do, right? And you just say, hey, ask me as the person, your personal friend, give you a personal, opinion.
Yep.
But if you go into a therapist, you're not being told what to do. You're being sort of guided to find what's best for you.
Right. And that's the catch. So I teach a class on counseling theories, and that's one of the first points I always try to get home for them. A lot of people want to become a therapist because they give good advice. But that's not your job as a therapist. And I think that's where we...
That's a talk show host show.
Sorry. Yeah, that might be a different show. That's not ours. But I think a lot of people have that misperception. And there's a lot of other professions that do give advice and suggestions or make direct recommendations. Obviously, if it's something with safety, I'm going to tell you exactly what needs to be done, and I will step in and do what needs to be done. But in general, you guide people to find their own answers. The catch with giving advice is either you give good advice and people have to keep coming back and it makes them dependent on you, or you don't give good advice and then they don't trust you. So it's a lose-lose for the therapist and for the therapeutic relationship. So that's where, we'll talk about options. And I've had a couple of clients come back to me and they'll say, I was going to call you, but I know what you're going to say is you're going to ask me, what do you think I think? And I'm like, and that's true, and that happens for several reasons. Because I want to hear where they're at. If I'm working with someone, we set goals at the beginning of our work together, and it's important for me to see where they're at with their own growth. So if a difficult situation does come up, I do ask first, what do you think? Or what's your plan? So I can hear from them what they're thinking. And sometimes they have better ideas than I thought of, but that's why I ask first to see what they're thinking, where they're planning on going with it. And then I can build from that, or I can see where they're at, if they're understanding the situation, if they're still really personalizing or taking things very emotionally. And then it gives me an idea of where they're at with their own growth. And then we start from there.
And I guess, and certainly as I think about our discussions on one's own future, it's sort of part of that. You need to take ownership. You want to, most of us, I want to be the, master of my own domain and all the things that we say. Yeah, that doesn't happen. This honesty. But we want to be that person who has a sense of being empowered.
Yeah. Well, some do, some don't. That depends on personality and personal experiences. But that's a lot of times what we're working towards. And so that was what I was thinking as we're kind of coming to the end, I think, of the year, looking at kind of the last few years and what we've done. But, which is important for everyone, to give that reflection, to take time and look at what happened before, what worked, what didn't work. But then looking at what you can do going forward. So I think I shared a tool that Miss Heather Lockhart, a life coach I do a lot of work with, she and I run a lot of workshops together, and this is one of my favorite little tools that she's got, called the Accountability Ladder, which looks at taking ownership of your decisions and the things that you do in your own life. I think especially with the holidays coming up, it can be easy just to feel like, I have no time for myself. I can't get anything done. Everything is so busy. There's people everywhere, and just feeling like there's no way that we can do everything that's coming up. We feel obligated to say yes to family obligations, to work functions. There's a long list we got from the kids of what they want for Christmas, and we just kind of go without giving any thought to ourselves. And so coming into the holidays, this is an important idea of looking at what we can do for ourselves and, putting ourselves back in the picture for that. But then also as we're starting the new year as well, as we're setting our goals and thinking about what we want for the future, beginning to see what we can do. Yeah. A lot of us fall victim to the victim mindset, where we just kind of go with things and feel like just everything's out of our control, as opposed to kind of stepping back and looking at what are the options here and what can I do for myself. And it does take conscious effort to make those decisions. And it's one, especially being pregnant, I have to constantly practice myself because there are a few things out of my control right now too. But, it's something that with practice, it becomes easier.
All right, Dr. Bob, when we come back from the break, always appreciate it. I learn so much each time you're here. To our listeners, phone lines are open if you want to share a comment or ask a question, 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Can you imagine your home completely organized? At Brand Source Custom Closets, we can. We specialize in designing and building custom closets and storage units for any room in your home, including the garage, with tailored designs and custom LED lighting solutions to fit your lifestyle and budget. Our custom closets expert is committed to enhancing the value of your home with a solution that is uniquely yours. Visit our showroom or call 623-6774 to schedule a no-obligation appointment with our design expert. Brand Source Custom Closets, 209 Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park.
The offices of dermatologist Dr. Dwayne Porter will be taking appointments from December 2nd through the 10th at his Crew Road Clinic. Appointment slots are limited. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email dr.portercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020 to book your appointment today. That is 946-9020.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And in the studio, the excellent company of Dr. Alexandra Boyd. I thank you, honestly, for not just coming this afternoon and, well, as you've shared, all of you for coming today.
Yes.
If it's okay with you, but I know it is, my public prayer is that you and the entire family, the baby and the one to be, are all blessed, all healthy. You guys have a fantastic, process between now and arrival.
Thank you.
And just a blessed life, man. I say this sincerely. God is merciful. I can only imagine if someone else looking at me go, not so sure about him. So if he can have mercy on me, it must be a good God. So my blessings and prayers for you guys.
Thank you. So we'll have a brand new start.
Yeah.
And we have lots of big things coming at the beginning of the year. And I can now empathize with the parents. My baby's only 2, but he already has opinions on what he wants for Christmas. I got him exactly what he wanted the other day for a school party, and he came home wanting what the other kid had anyway, even though he'd been asking me for it for 3 weeks. So, I understand the stress that parents go through.
We want to do, and that's, thank you for sharing that too, because I think many times, we forget, or we don't have that, the word I guess we use is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
He would, feels it, knows it, they say.
Right.
And we forget sometimes, or we think it's easier than it is, even though it should be easy. What do you mean you can't do that? Right.
Listen, I was like, everything is more difficult with a child. I've always had a lot of respect for parents. I have even more respect now, and he's only 2, so I can only imagine when he gets older and he can properly formulate his opinions exactly as he feels them. But it's true, and I think especially coming into the holidays and especially at the start of the year, we end up with a lot of shoulds. I should do this. I should do that. I should eat the salad first. I should go for a walk this morning. I should go to the work Christmas party. And I think that that's where there's a lot of expectations put on us from society, especially these days with technology and social media making us feel guilty when we miss a party and we get to see all the great things that happen. So I think it takes even more effort these days to be more accountable and to take that position of ownership of our lives and making ourselves a priority again. We often feel guilty or selfish for doing that. And that's where having a therapist in your corner or a coach, whoever you got, can be really helpful to say, no, you're going to be a much better mother if you do take that 30 minutes to go for your walk in the morning, if you do hit that yoga class, whatever it is that you do for you. And that's where it can be helpful to have an advocate on your side to help with that internal voice that, especially in the Caribbean, the Caribbean mothers are very good at the guilt to browbeat us into things.
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared that, because we probably understand that, it's been used so much now that I believe it's become a cliche. You're in the aircraft, put on your mask first. No, you know that, but you can take care of your child, or that person next to you that's important. And many of us feel guilty to take that extra time to exercise, even though we'll be better to put aside time to study so that we can pass that thing, to get a certificate or to get accepted to something, because it's going to help us to provide more for our families. But we feel guilty for taking that. Not quite sure exactly why that is. Therapists, you probably understand that.
Especially as a mom. I was like, mom guilt is real.
Some dads too.
Wherever you are. But it's important to take that step back, use some of the techniques we've discussed, like the cognitive restructuring, to look for the bigger picture, to think about how proud your kids are going to be when you do finish. I've had a couple of students, a couple of friends that have finished their degree with their parent. Their mom or their dad said they'd go back to school if they did, and then they graduate together. And I think that that's just awesome. That if you do go for your run, or if you go to your dance class or swim class, whatever it is, you go for a walk on the beach, it's going to help you to diffuse, with the stress and tension that's going on, and allow you to better engage with your kid, later on, or to better, to be more present at the work function or the friends gathering that afternoon, by allowing you to do something for yourself, manage your emotions, put yourself back on your to-do list, and then really spend the time with them, as opposed to being frustrated that you didn't get to go for your run, or feeling guilty that, that you didn't get your studying done. So it allows you to take that time and then spend the time with them. That's really what people want, is to have that quality, experience at Christmas. And that's what we often lose when we try to get everything done.
I think that's the thing, as you were saying that, I was trying to remember, I was looking, I can't remember who said it and what it was. It was talking about the to-do list. And this person meant to something, and they said, we do this to-do list, and some was even honey-do list. We craft it in different ways, but I don't recall what it was and how they worded it as to how to prioritize. And it sounded almost intuitive, but as I looked at it again, I thought, it's not practical. But I shared that to ask, are we doing it by repetition? The more we do something, hopefully, the better we get at it. But then the more we continue to do something, the more it becomes almost our norm. That failure to prioritize your own health and wellness. That idea that this thing will get done in time. No, if you don't make an effort, it won't.
Looking at the self-care stuff, you mean? No, it can be hard, but if you can get into a routine, that's really what's most helpful. And that's where I say don't plan on 2 hours at the gym, especially if it's been 10 years since you've been there. 30 minutes is the length of a sitcom. So that's how I started going to the gym. I found a gym with a TV, so I'd go when my favorite show was on. I'd do my 30 minutes on the treadmill, and then I'd go home.
Yeah.
So if you can work it into your schedule, all the better. And it doesn't have to be something that's typical or something that you used to enjoy. People grow and change. Lifestyles change as we go through different situations. So finding something that works for you. And it doesn't even have to be 30 minutes all at once anymore. There's now studies coming out that show the benefits of doing 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes later. But figuring out what works for you and what is sustainable is ideal. So not going too big too quickly, but also when it comes to the holidays, planning that time ahead to make sure that you're able to get it in can be really helpful.
That's it. Well, we got to get in our news break. When we return, I want you to continue, please enlighten us, help us to be not just educated and informed, but through this we might find our way to make a meaningful impact on owning our future and being. All right. 949-8037, toll free with a complimentary flow, 1-800-534-8255. We'll return. We have more company with Dr. Alexandra Warden. And then at 1:30, segment sponsored by the Christian Association for Civics and Political Education, attorney at law Christopher Perry will be our guest, and we're going to talk about the consultation process for the national ID. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brack and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The Cayman Ministers Association holds its National Day of Thanksgiving and Prayer at the site of the old glass house next to the government administration building a short time ago. A small crowd turned out to celebrate in song and prayer, thanking God for his protection, praying for the government, and expressing gratitude for God's protection and provision for the people of the Cayman Islands. In international headlines, Russia today unleashed what Ukrainian authorities call the latest massive missile attack across their country, striking homes and buildings, killing civilians, and disrupting electrical power and water supplies in areas, notably in the Black Sea port city of Odessa. Ukraine's Air Force claimed it shot down more than 60 of the 70 missiles fired. Scientists around the world are warning governments who will be gathering in Montreal this week for the United Nations Biodiversity Summit to not repeat past mistakes and are urging officials to avoid trade-offs between people and conservation needs in a report today. The study, published in One Earth Journal, found that even though there's been an increase in investment in conservation over the last 3 decades, governments have not succeeded in bending the curve on biodiversity decline. Those are your headlines. I'm April Cummings.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Born in Watering Place, Cayman Brack, on the 8th day of July, 1936. Captain Fred Elman Scott was the 5th child born to Nalio and Vera Scott. Captain Scott enjoyed a fulfilling career at sea, spanning more than 50 years. He was ahead of his time, employing his mathematical and computer skills to create payroll software, depth charts of Georgetown Harbor, and his pride and joy was his weather program that could detect when a storm formed anywhere in the world and was able to track and forecast its path. He had 6 children and was married for 52 years to Bernadette Silva, whom he met during his tenure in Brazil. In 1954, when Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II visited, Captain Scott had the distinct honor shaking the Queen's hand and piloting the Royal Yacht Britannia and anchored it in the Georgetown Harbor. Captain Scott was a humble man who liked his khaki suit and cap and loved to share his knowledge with those who crossed his path. He was honored at the National Heroes Day, acknowledging the seafaring heritage of these islands.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks to Dr. Alexandra Borden for sharing with us. It's been wonderful. I want to say a decade.
We were almost there.
But with the 2 years intervening, it feels like centuries.
We had a few shows the year before.
Yeah. And and it's been good to be able to have these discussions. I think increasingly, for some of us who want to learn, I don't know if the right phrase is self-develop, improve, but we can if we make a concerted effort. And if we draw alongside people who can help to nurture and guide and the like. And sometimes it is public discussions that spark an interest, or they may direct someone somewhere. We're getting to the end of the year. Yep. We've got Christmas. For many, it's about stress of the holidays, when it should be about something else. But yet we stress about it. The food, the gifts, and everything else.
Yep. The people, the parties. There's a lot of expectations that come up. And I will say as well, for over the years as well, I think the show has served a lot of purposes with allowing us to discuss topics that are relevant to people, but also letting people get to understand how mental health professionals work, getting to hear us now, getting to see us as well, that we're not scary. We don't, we're not locked in a lab somewhere. We're not going to lock you in hospital as we meet you. And nothing scary or weird like that. We're all humans. All have different perspectives, different levels of training, different kinds of training, and a lot of different things to offer. So I think that it's helped to kind of bring the mental health professional community into the community, allowing people to see who we are, what we do, and hopefully bringing some of these topics into more informal discussions amongst friends and family as well. So thank you. So
I appreciate it, man. It's been helpful. And I'm wondering, as you were sharing that, like some of us, from two perspectives. One, we believe that it's only them that need to do that thing. That person needs to go exercise because, and we assign labels, right? Without realizing that person is, if you put a mirror up, is you. Doesn't matter how healthy you may be. Thank God you are. It doesn't. But good exercise, good lifestyle can only make what is in your mind great even better. But also talking to someone, getting a perspective on how to. I use the word improve. Some people say that's not right. But in saying that, I wonder to what extent we as people are sometimes, just oblivious to something. Is it that we're so focused on things, we take things for granted, we don't see it? Is it a level of us just being blind to it willfully, or just don't have a knowledge? And if so, if there's a difference, what do we do about it to understand the situation before us, their potential impact it could have, how to resolve it? I mean,
well, that's where if things just aren't working like you're hoping that they would, that it can be helpful to meet with someone, either a therapist, psychologist, a counselor, to get an outside perspective on what's going on, right? Because sometimes we're just busy and kind of falling into, like we talked about, this victim mindset where we just kind of like wait and hope for things, or think that we can't do anything, or that our life is just hard, we just have bad luck, and things are very much out of our control. So whether it's just that we're kind of like in this mindset and approach to things, or if it's that we aren't willing or aren't able to see our role in it, especially if there's like repeated patterns. We see this a lot with, like with relationships or sometimes with experiences on jobs. If there's a pattern that's going on, it can be helpful to have someone outside to help you figure out what's going on. And that's where, before I do things like confrontations with clients, a lot of times I will take some time to get to know them. And if they are in a relationship and it's a difficulty in a particular relationship, I may even ask to meet the partner and see what's going on, just to make sure that I don't have, a biased, one-sided perspective of what's going on.
Is that normal, Dr. Borden, that as you said, I think I found a thing I hopefully I say.
Okay.
The perspective is if there's one individual, let's use the relationships and seeing a therapist, it's a one-sided approach, or is it that, as you said?
A lot of times we will work with the individual that's come in, but if it's something that's going on, especially if it's been going on for a while, I'll often ask to meet the partner.
Okay.
And that way, or the parent, the child, or whoever is happening. So I can see kind of, when we become very entrenched in difficulties, especially in relationships, especially family relationships, things do become very biased because they're so emotional, right? And there's a lot that depends on those relationships as well. So those are often the trickiest ones. So that way I can see, what is the partner like? What are their mannerisms? How do they respond to ideas or outside perspectives? Is it the way that the mom is asking the child to do something that is the issue? And they maybe can report it back to me in one way, but when it actually comes out with the child, it's coming out very differently. How is the communication? What's the tension like between a couple? So there's a lot of different things that I can observe. And so that's what I say, if a client is willing to allow a family member to come in, and sometimes they are, and they'll, yes, please. They drag him in the next time.
And you tell him, why won't you tell him right now?
And I make clear that that's not how it works.
No, I'm trying to be clear.
I've had that request before, and so sometimes we do.
Okay, twice I asked.
Sometimes we do prep sessions to make sure, and if a client comes in and is really angry, and I don't think a family session is going to be helpful because they've come in with that kind of approach, I'll say, let's do some work first. Let's get to know each other. Let's lay the groundwork, and then we bring in the partner. And it gives me a chance to meet the partner or the other family member of concern, and get a feel for them, help me better support the client when they're dealing with them, let the partner or the family member get to know me, see what we're doing. And a lot of times I'll explain, this is what's happening. This is, if there is anxiety, depression, this is what's going on. These are things we're working on. This is how you can help us. Is there anything that you would like to see different in the relationship? So I always keep it very balanced, and I am very clear with clients that's how it's going to work. But it gives me a chance to see the other person, see how responsive they are. Sometimes the other person won't come. That gives me information on if they're willing to look at change or take feedback. Sometimes they'll come and they'll be very open. I've had some family members really surprise clients. They show up, they're very engaging in session. They take on the ideas, they go home, they're willing to talk about it. I've had sometimes partners or family members show up and they show up, but aren't really engaged, aren't really present, aren't willing to discuss anything. Or they show up and they're like, yes, 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 they know I'm a doctor, and they just kind of say what they have to say. So there's a lot of different ways it can go. Either way, I get information to help the client. I try to get some buy-in from the partner or the family member, because obviously they're the ones that are with the client most of the time. And the hardest thing about individual therapy is that you can change an individual and work with them, but if the family system won't allow the change, then it's they get stuck. Yeah,
I was thinking, as you shared, in relation to families, whether it's couple or whether it's child and parent, there's a dynamic that is happening within the space, and sometimes it has to be a willingness for both spouses to embrace it, or parent and child, through communication, to acknowledge. Some of us, and I was, as you shared, I'm thinking that understanding boundaries to some extent, hard boundaries and flexible boundaries. Right. There are certain things in me, hopefully not many are trying to be conscious of them, that I'm immovable on that. That is where I draw the line, literally, and I'm not going to flex on that at all. Yeah. And I've asked myself, well, is that a good thing? I give us a simple example. Nothing to do with religious or dietary restrictions or anything. But I know I can't do it. Eat pork.
Okay.
I just can't. I've seen...
Not even bacon?
Not even bacon.
Oh.
All right? And I tried it 2 occasions, right? One of my brothers does the best pork you'll get, man. He gets a 60-pound suckling from Mr. Willie because has the box, the grape wood, and hours and days of preparation. And I once I tried to help her, and I thought, I can't do this. When it's done, there's the meat falling off the bone. The bones are gray. Beautiful aroma. I mean, it just looks. And even everybody, religious preferences aside, have a taste. I can't. A family member once did some, those meat-like things where you put 3 or 4 different meats and you combine them and you get a sauce and you put thing in it. And it's, sounds pretty good, right? And I taste, wait, say Mr. Lim. And I taste, I taste it.
Yeah.
And I go, I can't eat this.
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't know that it was in there. I could tell it was in there.
Yeah. Well, all of us are going to have certain things that we are flexible on and some that we're not. Yeah. And that's helpful to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, and once you know that, then being able to communicate that to the people around you. And if you're dealing with it in a partner or a family member, understanding that and then knowing you have the choice to work around that or not.
But that's it. The other person needs to be receptive, right? To one share.
If they're not willing to flex on that, that's their prerogative. But once we know that, then I would work with the client to decide whether they can live with that. And if so, how are they going to do it? Do we just ignore it? Do we find other ways of finding other things that you'd be able to eat?
Yeah.
Right? Something to replace bacon. Turkey bacon.
Can't do
it. Finding other ways to deal with it. Or, is that going to be a deal breaker for you? Yeah. And I'd say that's the big thing, in any of this. I do a lot of work with assertiveness with clients, with being able to express needs, being able to make requests, being able to set boundaries. And in looking at taking ownership of things, it's going to be recognizing limitations for yourself, that you can't attend 6 parties. Okay, I do have a couple friends that have managed to attend 6 parties.
Yeah.
Most of us can't can't do that. Personal limitations, but also in relationships as well, and respecting that and knowing that there's only so much we can do. So, especially if I have a client that is working on speaking up, and they've got very strong family members that are not okay with them speaking up and taking that role, knowing that we can't control them. You can do what you need to do for you. You can state your needs in a very assertive, effective way, and they're still going to tell you no, or still going to sabotage you in some way. And, knowing that you're the only one that you can control. You can't control how other people respond to you. So when they're looking at their success, I make sure that they take that into account, that we're not responsible for what other people do, and we can't judge our success by other people's responses either, because that's based on them, not on us.
The latter we might be easier to recognize and adjust, but the former, we're not responsible. And I think the many of us still feel responsible for the others in our lives, not our children, but even our, as a phrase that I'm not quite sure if it's a misnomer or not, our adult children. We still feel responsible for them, for our business partner, our partners, our friends. We feel responsible for them.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do, right? You can provide opportunities, you can provide information, you can provide support, but ultimately it's up to them what they do. And that's hard. And the child thing, I'm not going to go there because I said I'm a new mom. I'm sure he will always be my baby, and I'll do everything for him. But that's a difficult thing to accept. We feel bad for making someone feel upset. We feel bad for hurting someone's feelings. But while we are responsible for what we say and how we say it, we also can't control their feelings, and that's important to know. And there's something we talk about with cognitive distortions called personalization, where we take the blame for things that are out of our control, and that's not possible either. It ends up just hurting us and then hurting the relationship. So, and that's one of the things that can be helpful in therapy, to kind of come and figure out, like, what am I doing? What can I do differently? What's out of my control?
I mean, I hopefully people will benefit from our discussions. That's one thing that I've recognized, that I know I'm not responsible for this. It's not my fault. It wasn't even in my country. I wasn't even alive. But you feel a sense of, responsibility for it. You see, I think more lip service. Okay.
Definitely. And I always tell clients, if you did something wrong, if you don't see it, we're going to talk about it. Because I do think it's important. If you did make a mistake, or if you did do something that was not the best decision, it's important you own up to it and look at what you can do differently the next time.
Right.
But sometimes we take a lot of ownership for things that are out of our control.
I mean,
and that hurts our self-esteem and affects our relationships, because we end up pulling away or trying to rescue people. And a lot of times the rescuing behaviors is actually more about us than about them. So so there's something that I was introduced to actually by a client that they call it the drama triangle, where there's the victim, the rescuer, and the perpetrator. And when you kind of get caught up in where it's we talked about doing a show on attachment. We'll talk more about this then. But when we get caught in these weird relationship dynamics, they kind of really suck us into really unhealthy ways of interacting with people, whether we're taking our anger out on people, which is actually from our internal unhappiness, whether we're constantly the victim of things by not being able to stand up for ourselves and not being able to get ourselves safe, or if we are the rescuers who are always going out to save people as a way of kind of making ourselves it makes us feel better, but often hurts the relationship with the victim.
I wrote it down. A friend shared. Said, you can't save everyone,
right?
And that's basically what made some of us, for whatever reason, and why that is. As you were sharing, I was thinking to the time that it almost became politically appropriate to do. We hear all these apologies, by some sitting politician about something that happened, and
definitely a believer in the best apologies change behavior. So it's something I talk about with clients as well. It's good to apologize, or it's good that he or she apologized.
Right.
Now you need to watch and see.
Yeah.
And if it's you who had to apologize, what are you going to do differently next time? And that's always the big thing, and that's a lot of what we spend time working on in therapy, is like, if something happened, and whatever happens, okay, no judgments. But if it comes up again, what can we do differently next time?
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's really helpful in this idea of kind of taking ownership and moving into the top of the ladder, where we've got, acknowledging reality, embracing it, looking for solutions and making things happen, is that it's looking for out of the box ideas, looking for new ways of doing things. Even if this is what you've always done, or this is how everyone does it, or this is what your friend did. Looking for new ideas is big, and making a plan, going forward of what you want. I think that, Cayman has a lot of shoulds and expectations and cultural pushes in certain ways, especially with things like looking at a career or your education, but looking at what actually makes you happy. What you want your life to be like, right? Because I work with some young people who want to be doctors or lawyers. I'm like, okay, go talk to a doctor or lawyer and find out what their daily activities are like. Even different kinds of doctors and different kinds of lawyers have different lifestyles. So going and finding out. If you want to be a teacher, go talk to them, see what it's like. But considering out of the box ideas or something different that might make you happy. And I think that doing things for yourself in that way and considering options. Of course, as you get into things, reassessing. Did it work? Did it not work? Am I actually enjoying this? Is important too, and allowing yourself the opportunity to make those changes as they come up. So adapting to things and being flexible in your goals too.
On that ladder, is it each rung, or do you move up and down the rung?
Yeah. So it's the goal is going to be to, as you begin to kind of take this different objective perspective, that you're able to, in each situation, look at what you can do differently. So the victim behaviors, and going down, it's getting more difficult, right? So we've got the wait and hope, where you don't feel like you're an agent in your life and there's nothing that you can do to make a difference. The I can't, right? And that's something we get a lot of, actually that every time, pretty much every time I teach the counseling class and clients, the student therapists start giving advice. I can't do that because that won't work because you shut down everything and all you see is what you can't do rather than looking for solutions or for answers. Personal excuses, where we're not pushing ourselves, or we kind of put things away and don't allow ourselves to try something new. We make excuses that often cause guilt or shame or frustration and don't allow us to try something different, or blaming others. It's their fault. If he would just do this, then this would work. If she would just do that, then I could be happy. And I hear that a lot of that as well, where it's someone else's fault, right? And if it's someone else's fault, there's nothing that we can do about it, and then we're stuck. And then the bottom one is unaware or unconscious. You said earlier when you're kind of asking about people in difficult situations in their lives, if you don't even see the difficulties you're in, then that's kind of where you're at, where you don't even see it. So the goal is, as you're kind of like beginning to look at what you can do, there's always going to be things that are out of our control. So it's looking at what you are able to do, what you're able to do now, and beginning to take those steps, being brave enough to take them, brave enough to think outside the box and look for alternative solutions and try them and reassess. And you will get more confident as you begin to move through it. You'll get more information as you go, and it becomes easier as you begin to prioritize yourself and make better decisions. And doing things like even just planning your time better, especially with the holidays coming up, and allowing yourself the opportunity to dream again, as you're looking at the bigger goals as well.
Dream
can
again.
Be important.
While you're weak.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, as you share that too, we're thinking of the holidays and all of the demands that we may place on ourselves, that are placed on us. The notion that depending on the work environment, it may become more hectic. The idea that there may be certain social obligations, and I use that word deliberately. So these things are when they should be fun, we feel committed to do it and we have to. But then are we pushing aside the things that we used to do, that evening walk or the sunset or the exercise, or maybe you had 5 minutes every day that you would read daily, but for some reason now for the next 2 or 3 weeks you're not going to do these things. Why not?
Yeah. And that's where Miss Heather talks about put yourself back in your schedule, put yourself back in your calendar, put yourself back on your priority list. I love her speeches. She's got some great little elevator speeches. But putting yourself back in and knowing that those things are what are going to give you the good holidays. And I'm here to give you permission to allow yourself that time. That will help to keep the balance, to keep you feeling strong, keep you feeling more in control. Without, what happens is we become resentful when we become the victims too often, right? We get to the fourth work function and we don't want to be there. We're going to have the same small talk again. We're resentful that we're missing out on the things that we're enjoying. So it's okay to be selective of what you pick. It's okay to say no. It's okay to delay it, to let someone know you'll check your schedule and get back, or you always come, but this year you're not going to be able to make it. And that's okay. And allow yourself that, and know that that it would be better to decline the invitation and to go to what you really want to do, rather than to go and become resentful or to be distracted while you're there. But then
there's, as I listen to you, this person weighs in and saying, but there are sometimes, I'll paraphrase, where, I use the word obligation, and they picked up on that and say, well, where you're obligated, you have to be there. They gave a couple of examples, there's the work function, and then there's the child's play. You want to be at the child's play, you have to be at the work function. You can't split the two. You're going to miss both if you try to do that. How do you choose? Picking in this quick exchange with this individual. Obviously, this is a real example that may have happened or is expected. You pick, the work function. You deny yourself this momentous occasion. You pick this. You potentially get a bad mark at work, and you lose that opportunity. You're not Johnny. You're not a good work ethic. How do you do that?
Not a team player.
Yeah.
Don't
play well with others.
That can be difficult. And I would say I know how important it is for the kids to get to their place. But I'd say talk to them, let them know what's going on. That it's a kid's play. You'll be a bit late to the function, or you're gonna have to leave a little bit early. A lot of times with clients, that's what we'll work on is I call it an exit plan. If there's something that you feel like you have to go to, that's okay. Go. But if it's something like that you can plan ahead, it's fair to let them know. You know, I'll come to the work function from 4 to 5. I've got my kids play at 5:30, and obviously I don't know the workplace or the boss.
No, exactly.
I don't know. If it was a client, I would know, and we'd talk about that. This is the boss. This is the situation. What's going on? And if you absolutely can't miss, maybe making sure that that the other parent or the nanny or someone that the kid is really excited about is there. Make sure it's recorded, and you guys can watch it later. So I'd look for options. But otherwise, if it's something you can plan ahead and they're receptive, you can let them know. I'm going to be a bit late because I've got my kids play, but I'll come right afterwards. So there's options. It doesn't have to be black and white, one or the other, but allowing yourself the flexibility. If it's something like a family function with maybe some family members that you don't get along with, or there's very differing views, it's fair to have an exit plan. So that one, maybe you don't warn them ahead of time. You can always warn them ahead if you've got something else that you've got to go to. But it's fair to have, a plan should something come up or this happen, a plan to end difficult conversations, and that's okay. I'm not discussing politics tonight, but thank you, or redirecting it back to the weather or something safe.
And this is where I think having, if I may, a therapist like you on a regular, ongoing basis, I would even say, set up a session going into the holidays. You know stressful times of your life, whether it's the Christmas, whether you have busy audit season, you need that person that helps you to cope more sensibly, if I may say, with life.
Yeah, and whether it's helping you come up with strategies or whether it's supporting you in implementing those strategies. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. And then we try things, and then we reassess, and then come up with another plan. So a lot of times that's just what we're there for, is a sounding board, and just, people are getting into difficult times, or they're really stressed or really busy, and we doubt ourselves. So sometimes I'm just there to cheerlead, and help them with fine tuning things. So it's not always like helping generate massive solutions. Sometimes it's just support, that can be helpful. Just someone in your corner to go through things. I know sometimes it's easier if someone has said, that's what I want to say. I give you permission to keep your fitness a part of it. Keep your self-care a part of the next few weeks. Plan it. Plan ahead and get it done. Like I always work out in the mornings. My workouts are a lot shorter now than they used to be, and a little bit different. But plan ahead and make sure that you take that time for yourself, knowing it will be better for everyone in the end.
Well, Dr. Borden, always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
Excited, for what the new year brings for all of us.
Yes, thank you.
And again,
same here.
Prayers for everything. So thanks so much, and hopefully I get to see you, all of you.
Yeah.
Blessings to you and the whole family.
Yes, thank you. We are growing. So.
There you go, man. Beautiful, young. It's amazing. Husband, you guys are great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
And happy holidays and all the best to everyone out there as well.
There we go. Well, when you come back, we'll have another discussion. We invite you to be a part of the discussion. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Town. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com. At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Water Authority Cayman would like to inform its customers that the public water service in Cayman Brac, east of the intersection of Cross Road and West End East Road, will be interrupted from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. on Tuesday, the 6th of December 2022. The service interruption is necessary to facilitate investigative work on the Cayman Brac water distribution system. The Water Authority apologizes for any inconvenience this interruption in service may cause and thanks the public for their patience and understanding.
Williams Productions is proud to bring you the 2022 New Year's Eve Gospel Concert, West Hampton. And Adam Crabb. Live from First Baptist Church on Crew Road. Tickets $25 pre-sold, $35 at the gate. Get your seating today at Funky Tanks and Christian Enlightenment Center. Funds raised will help support the Cayman Islands Crisis Center. West Hampton. And he walks with me. And Adam Crabb. Sometimes he's water. Live December 31st, 6:30 p.m. First Baptist Church. Tickets available at Funky Tanks and Christian Enlightenment Center. Proudly sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport, Cayman First, DMS Organization, Tony's Toys, Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture and Heritage, Praise 87.9, Valumed Pharmacy, Hides and Sons, Mykonos, Health City, Radio Cayman, and the Office of the Premier.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And as promised, we have now a segment sponsored by the Christian Association for Civics and Political Education, Turnout Law. Chris Perry joins us. Turnout KST. Hey, thank you very much to our listeners. We're going to go into this segment. Mr. Perry, get you to guide us and navigate. We know that before our House of Parliament, there are a number of bills that are being sponsored. Some of which the public just begin to understand almost every day. I'll give us an example. Someone said to me, "Hey, do you know there's the contempt of court law a bit that's coming up?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I looked at it. Well, we're talking about the digital ID. Are we talking about this? Maybe we'll talk about that too." But what is it that is happening from the legal perspective, and why is it important from the public's perspective to be informed? I mean, the government's going to be doing what the government is going to do.
Let me start by saying good afternoon and thank you for inviting me along this afternoon. My position today, I think, is not to take any kind of political stance on what the issues are, but it's to offer some comment on behalf of the Christian Association, just to deal with the issues that are perceived in respect of the proposed identification card and identification register laws, so that the public can be fully aware of what's in the laws, what isn't in the laws, what potential issues have arisen on a review of the proposed laws, so they can reach their own opinion on what they make of the legislation and be able to engage with the stakeholders in respect of that legislation. Because, of course, when it comes to matters of personal privacy and private information, these are very emotive and important subjects and matters that really go to the heart of what we hold close to ourselves, our right to a private life and our constitutional rights in that regard. So that's what I'd like to do, hopefully, during the course of the show. I think the starting point is to look at the bills as they've been published, and they were published in the Gazette on the 4th of November, the consultation period was for 1 month. So in fact, that closed yesterday. Mm-hmm. And for legislation of this importance, it perhaps ask the question, is a month enough for the public to truly understand what's going on in the legislation and to be able to understand what's going on? But it's perhaps important to say that following the publication of the bills, there have been a number of significant changes that have actually occurred as part of the engagement that's gone on so far. And I think that the starting point when it comes to the establishment of the identification register, there's a question mark over whether that is something that was to be mandatory or something that was to be voluntary. Now, looking at the contents of the laws that are proposed, what is actually in the bill that was gazetted, the intention was that registration would be mandatory. There would not be an option to say, I want to opt out, I don't want to get involved with that. Mm-hmm. As a result of some stakeholders putting their opinion forwards, the Honourable Minister has announced, I believe last week, that the intention now is to make registration voluntary, and he suggested that could be quite an easy thing to do. There are 2 references within Clause 3 and Clause 5 of the bill, which essentially sets out uses the word shall. And the word shall, as lawyers will tell you, is a mandatory word. Mm-hmm. And the suggestion was, we'll just change the word shall in Clause 3 and Clause 5 to may. So a person may choose to be registered, and the registrar, the registration process could become an optional one. I think the difficulty that we have is, bar that announcement that we're going to change words like shall to must, we haven't actually seen the bill being republished, and it's a lengthy document that runs to just under 40 pages, and it isn't really as simple as just changing a couple of references to shall to may. It's more important, because if the registrar may register a person, well, that reference in Clause 5.1, registrar may, that is an option that the registrar holds. So that has to be a qualified right. The registrar may only register if consent has been given by the person concerned in advance. And there's been no announcements as to how that's going to be achieved. I think one of the issues that the Christian Association has and wants to set out on behalf of people concerned is that it's not appropriate for the consultation to have closed yesterday in circumstances where we don't have a version of the bill that deals with it becoming voluntary. So it's very difficult to give informed comment, and for those interested stakeholders, members of the public, to give informed comment without actually seeing the words that are going to be used.
And as a listener, I recall the conversation with one of your colleagues at the bar, Attorney Lord James Samuel Jackson, the other week, sharing something similar, the word shall. And I made a comment, well, in the scriptures, thou shalt not kill. That's not an option. So shall is an important word.
It is.
In legal drafting. But then, as you just shared, well, the minister says we'll just take it out and change it. You brought us to appreciate that, well, there are more things there, because as you shared, that may then apply to the registrar having that discretionary right, as opposed to the individual saying, well, do I want to? From that perspective, then, is it?
Perhaps it's helpful if I just turn to exactly what is set out, so that the clause, the relevant clause is for the establishment of the register. First of all, we're looking at clause 3, and this, in the current wording in the published format, there is established a register which shall be called the identification register and which shall be kept and maintained for the following purposes. So very much mandatory choice of words. And we see that's followed as we get to Section 5, the registrar shall make an entry in the register in respect of a person under Section 3.2, and the entry shall include the identity facts in relation to the person where such information is known to the registrar. So that's the wording that we have now. If, for instance, looking at what was announced, that in Clause 5.1, we just changed the reference to from shall to may, then that would read, the register may make an entry. But the choice there, the option, vests with the registrar, not with the person concerned. And that's the concern that we have. It will require more changes just than the headline references from shall to may to actually do the job of making the act voluntary. And I think that's largely because the way in which the bills were originally prepared were for them to be mandatory application. So it's more than just a quick cursory change that's going to be required to make that alteration.
And I want to continue that line with you, but we also now told that Ms. Katina Anglin, in between her meetings, is able to join us remotely by phone.
Oh, fantastic.
With the acquiescence, the direction, and the excellent input of Mr. Lynn. Let's connect Ms. Katina on the call. Sorry, DJ?
I don't think I'm hearing anything through here just at the moment.
Not just yet. You turn that up. Let's see if we can connect up with Ms. Katina. Hey, Ms. Katina, how are you, Mom?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you very much for joining us. And for the public, we do know that normally you would be here with us in studio, but for your other obligations. Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Yeah, you turn that down a bit. All right. We get it. We can hear you, okay?
Good afternoon, Dwayne. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Perry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And good afternoon, Cayman Islands. It's wonderful to have you join us again this afternoon for this very important segment brought to you by the Christian Association for Civics and Political Education. And thank you so much, Chris, for what you've already introduced, Mr. Perry, for what you've already introduced to the public about the concerns around this bill. And I know that you have a whole lot more to bring to their attention and why it's so important that public consultation was allowed on this because of the ramifications that the bill, if brought into law, has the potential to do. And for the benefit of the public, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the gentleman who's talking to you, Mr. Christopher Perry. And so prior to being admitted as an attorney in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Perry was called to the Bar of England and Wales in 2002. So he's got in over 20 years of litigation and courtroom advocacy experience. And he's appeared at every level, including Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. And Mr. Perry has specialisms, including, particularly relevant to this, administrative law, human rights, civil litigation, commercial litigation, a whole lot of other areas under his belt. And so he's got 20 years of legal practice and specialism in this area. Mm-hmm. So I just want to encourage the listeners to call in also with questions that they may have.
I'll do my best. No pressure.
Yes. So unfortunately, I'm unable to join you in studio today. I will be listening in. I do have obligations to my clients, and as you know, I'm on my way to being called to the bar.
Congratulations. I'm excited for you.
Yes. And so it has, Dwayne, I've been absent in the studio for a little bit, but I've been pushing ahead a lot of stuff.
We know. And you are in our prayers, my lady.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You take care. Thanks, too, for
yes, thank you. And thanks to Mr. Perry. And good afternoon, Cayman Islands. God bless you.
Amen. So, Chris, with that, and I appreciate Ms. Katina taking time to do that, because oftentimes it's humility, I think, that drives much of us. We don't need to say who we are and whatever, but it's good for listeners to ask. Proof is in the pudding, they say, when you taste in the pudding, but sometimes you don't even get a chance to see it, much less taste it, right?
Exactly.
There are, in this case, a number of things that you shared, and I would gather from just comments, even allegedly, one of the ministers in cabinet called our morning show and still to say about it. I'm not quite sure I'm following exactly what's happening with the legislation. You're now sharing there are suggested changes, but it's not published.
Exactly.
The House is set to meet, I think, on Wednesday. With that, there are two bills. One is the ID, one is the register. In the register, as I understand it, is where they'll create this national ID. We heard from, if I recall his comments correctly, Attorney Samuel Jackson saying we have the registered land law. They brought in the registrar, they brought in the register, they brought in the system, they did all these things. We can have it under one bill. My question, not his, but why are we doing it in two bits as opposed to one bill?
Well, it's difficult to know. Of course, the ID card element is probably going to be contingent on the passing of the identification register bill. So the two very much go hand in hand with each other. Because one is for the register itself and one is establishing the ID card, it was probably felt that they could be split. Because, for instance, the register could still exist without the ID card existing. It could still have operation of the register and information being shared in accordance with the terms of that law without us needing to carry an ID card. So maybe that was the thinking. But the focus, I think, very much on behalf of the Christian Association here is the establishment of the register and looking at what the purposes of that law is, what is hoped to be achieved by that law, but also looking at those justifications that have been talked about, but looking what else is in the law, because sometimes it's not just a case of dealing with the headline information and the headline purposes within the law. And one of the concerns raised by the Christian Association is embedded within that law are further significant provisions that go above and beyond what is the stated objectives of the law. And I think that's one of the areas of concern that have been noted by the association. And I think that's something I'd quite like to do today, is sort of just explain that, because particularly in circumstances, the way in which I think the law could be fairly described is enabling legislation. So it's the key in the door that sets out various powers, but it also delegates a number of other powers to Cabinet. So that means that this government or any future government, a government in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, in 50 years' time, could use the delegated powers to make further amendments to the law within Cabinet. I think it's important that the public understand those elements of this law as well.
Okay. Sorry, can we take the break later? We got to take it now. Got to take the break now, Mr. Perry. When you return, tell us that. So, people, get your popcorn and stay tuned for Talk Today.
Thank you.
You know, Savannah Pharmacy saved my life.
Really? Was it the medication they got you?
No, not this time. I forgot my wife's birthday. They were the perfect place for last-minute shopping.
That's one way to give yourself heart failure. Don't wait last minute for Christmas. Savannah Pharmacy is stocked up for Christmas right now. Gifts for men, women, and children. Home decor, clothes, toys for all ages, fragrances, candles, handbags, and so much more. I was there the other day, and trust me, they'll even wrap all your presents too.
Savannah Pharmacy, a lifesaver in more ways than one.
Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village provides you with more than just prescriptions. Always just around the corner with everything your family needs for this holiday season. WhatsApp your prescription refills to 929-5045.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
60 and bossy with J and money. Win a trip, it easy, trust me. Yeah. Come on, just send some money. A instant entry. Look how you lucky. Bossy, J and money, bossy. J and money, send you go a yard. Scene, bossy. Jamaica well bossy. 60 and bossy. We well proudy.
Celebrate Jamaica 60 with J and money for a chance to win a dream vacation for two to Jamaica, including airfare, resort stay, and more. Send money for a chance to win. Your loved ones will also be entered for a chance to win a brand new car. Competition runs from now until December 24th. J and money 60 and bossy enough.
Call 345-945-2014 for details. Available at J and Money locations across the Cayman Islands.
Bossy, Jamaica well bossy. 60 and bossy.
No J and bank account required.
It's the final sale of the year at Reflections with up to 50% savings on selected famous brands such as Nike, Reebok, Puma, US Polo, Adidas, Levi's, and Dockers pants for men and women. This holiday gift-giving season, Reflections gift certificates are the easiest way to share your love with friends and family. Levi's and Dockers holiday collection just arrived. Discover your new style and enjoy huge savings on shoes, bags, accessories, and the most fashionable clothing for all your holiday parties. Hurry in today. Purchase Reflections gift certificates for everyone on your shopping list and outfit yourself from their finest holiday collection. Don't miss up to 50% off savings at Reflections Holiday Sales Event. See yourself in Reflections. Open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Thursday and until 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Reflections is located on Shedden Road across from Napa.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks to the Chris Perry, one of our attorneys at KSG, for sharing with us. And with deference to our callers just momentarily, as we were just chatting prior to the break, you were going to take us through the legislation and some of the things you see with it from the perspective of legal analysis. Help us to understand it.
Well, looking at, I think it's important to say that the scope of the registration bill is set out in there. I'm just going to start by looking at Clause 3.1. Now, I talked about this previously. Clause 3.1b says that the register shall be maintained for the following purposes. And Purpose A, enabling the persons referred to prove certain facts about themselves. That's something we've heard and we understand. Providing a secure and reliable method for the use of identification information for the purposes of the ascertainment, verification, and authentication by a requesting entity of identity facts or related facts about the persons referred to, where such is necessary in the public interest. Now, I want to stop at that. That might sound fairly clear-cut, but as often when the way in which a piece of legislation like this is drafted, there are subsections and subsections. And moving down across the page, I look at subsection 4, and this says, for the purposes of subsection 1b, which I just quoted, the authentication or verification by a requesting entity is necessary in the public interest if it is for any of the following purposes. We'll go on to that. So this is what's trying to be sorted out by this piece of legislation. So A, establishing the eligibility, entitlement or categorization of persons for the efficient and effective provision of government services or benefits. Okay, sounds very straightforward, and there's probably not many people that would have an issue with that. Establishing a person's entitlement to vote at an election or in a referendum. All pretty straightforward. Prevention or detection of crime. The enforcement of immigration controls. Or national security. Now, national security can be a vague concept of what's meant by this. But then we see subsection F, any other purpose prescribed by regulation. Any other purpose.
And by regulations as well.
By regulation.
Subordinate legislation.
Yep. So that means if this bill is enacted in its current form, delegated to Cabinet is the ability to extend the purpose of the law for any other purpose, and that would not undergo further parliamentary scrutiny because that power will have already been delegated.
Normally, and I'm not a lawyer, and administrative law, not necessarily my forte for it, but ultra vires is a phrase that would come to mind. By putting that in, they would get around that test.
I think so, because it's within the legislation. So the ultra vires is beyond one's power.
Yeah.
But the power is here.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the key to the door.
Yeah. So
this is the blank check, as they say.
Right. And under, as we understand, the regulations, they happen in Cabinet. They don't go through the parliamentary scrutiny as the substantive law would.
Yeah.
And they now have the master key.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the areas which I think is of particular concern to the Christian Association. If there are any other purposes that crop up in the future, couldn't that be debated by Parliament? Or if there are anticipated areas that are already in the mind of those in preparing the legislation, well, can't it be specified now? It's always a problem where carte blanche is provided in this kind of way, and this isn't the only example.
Yeah, is this normal in legislative drafting, or just becoming the norm?
I think it's how can I put it? It does crop up more and more. Excuse me. Somebody wanting to get hold of me. Maybe they don't like what I've got to say. So okay. These sort of things do crop up, and there are circumstances where it's perfectly appropriate to set out the broad strokes, the important pillars of a piece of legislation. That would be within the bill, within the Act. But then there might be details which are best left to Cabinet, where they are minor details. So the implementation, things that need to be a little bit more fluid. But here I think it's, as can be said, for any other purpose prescribed by regulation is something which is it's interesting.
Wide and almost all-encompassing.
Well, exactly. Exactly right.
Well, you should reference at the outset, if I heard you correctly and understood what you shared, that with the two bits of legislation being sort of companion, that maybe in order to get the bill for the national ID, we need the second one for the register. But what if it's the other way around? Provide the bill for the ID as the car, right?
Yeah.
To get the register.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't say. From what you just shared, I'm wondering, if it's not that way.
Well, I think it's a consideration. I don't think has been given very much. These two go hand in hand with each other. I think it'd be very difficult to have an ID card without a corresponding identification register, because the ID card is there as a card establishing information that is set out on the register. So I think it'd be very difficult to separate the two. You could perhaps, as I said before, I think you could have the register existing without the ID card, but possibly not the other way around.
But then if you had the ID card and this register, so in the two bills, and if in the one for the ID card was to say, the question is if that was to say in there, hey, the register will be, and use the register land law for 1977 as the basis.
Yeah.
Potentially could be, the precedent is there, it could be followed.
Well, possibly. I mean, that's one of the things that I think it's another point that ties into this, is that if one looks at the purposes that I've just gone through, so if we talk about one's ability to access government services, that's contained in other legislation. And the powers of immigration and the police to detect crime and immigration breaches, that's already included in other legislation. So is there actually a need for this standalone identification register, or could, where appropriate, other enabling legislation be amended to include these provisions? So like you say, if there was a relevance to land, one could look at amending the land law. If there's elements to immigration. One would look at amendments to the immigration transition laws. Is that best? Is that the best place to find these changes?
All right. Well, Mr. Perry, after a news break, certainly would want to benefit from your legal scholarly academy.
Thank you.
So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Gimme Story 2022 wraps up with a dynamic finale at Smith Cove Barkadir Friday evening. Tellers included Rita Estevanovich, Aunt Suki and Ezekiel, and a slew of others who entertained the audience with all kinds of stories. The Cayman National Cultural Foundation event featured 6 nights of tales to promote the oral storytelling tradition. In international headlines, Oxford Dictionaries says goblin mode has been selected by online vote as its word of the year. It defines the term as a type of behavior which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typically in a way which rejects social norms or expectations. For the first time, this year's winning phrase was chosen by public vote from among 3 finalists selected by Oxford Languages lexicographers: goblin mode, metaverse, and the hashtag #IStandWith. Last week, Merriam-Webster announced that its word of the year is gaslighting, psychological manipulation intended to make a person question the validity of their own thoughts. Bob McGrath, an actor, musician, and children's author widely known for his portrayal of one of the first regular characters on the children's show Sesame Street, has died at the age of 90. McGrath's passing was confirmed by his family, who posted the news on his Facebook page on Sunday. Sesame Workshop tweeted Sunday evening that it mourns the passing of Bob McGrath, a beloved member of the Sesame Street family for over 50 years. McGrath was a founding cast member of Sesame Street when the show premiered in 1969. Playing a friendly neighbor, Bob Johnson. He made his final appearance on the show in 2017. Marking an almost 5-decade-long figure in the Sesame Street world. Those are your headlines. I'm April Cummings.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences. They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we're introducing the new Boneless Hot Sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new Boneless Hot Sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh. We think it's time you crossed over to a new vehicle. And with the Toyota Corolla Cross now at Vant Motors, you have plenty of reasons to make the switch. The crossover body and hybrid engine is a sleek design in a sturdy structure with a spacious interior that opens to extensive cargo space. Stuck in traffic? The high-performance self-charging hybrid system automatically switches between gas and electric vehicle mode, helping you lower both fuel costs and carbon emissions. The Corolla Cross has full LED lighting inside and out, an integrated display audio system with energy monitor, and a dual-zone climate control system to ensure comfort for all. Test drive the new Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid today at Vant Motors, Walkers Road. Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thanks too to Attorney at Law Chris Perry for sharing with us as we talk about some legislation, proposed legislation. Make sure it's not passed yet. Bills, as they call, before the House. As we continue our discussion, though, let's take this caller. And again, a special thanks to the caller for being so patient, for hanging on for so long. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome.
You knew it was me, Sterling. That's why you did what you did.
If I knew it was you, I probably would have taken it earlier, but then I didn't say that publicly, right?
Oh, goodness, no. Good afternoon to your guest.
Good afternoon to you.
I have a few questions, and I just wondered if you would write them down and answer them when I hang up the phone.
Of course,
Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me for being ignorant, but I'm trying to understand this card, ID card. And I want to ask the question, is it bad or good for the island? That's one question. And what do you have to say about the fingerprint machine, if you have anything to say in regards to that? I saw someone had the ID card on their phone where they were showing how it would be made up. Mm-hmm. And the card had a picture, and then all of the information, and it says Caymanian. You know what I mean? And then if it was someone else, it would say Cayman status or something in that category, depending on the individual. Mm-hmm. Apparently, a card would have a different a nationality and where they're from. I just want to say that at one point in time at Kirk Freeport, their staff had name tags, and all our name tags had Cayman Island, Honduras, Philippines, wherever we were from, working at that company. Mm-hmm. So, from the little bit that I've gathered in regards to this ID card, it sounds like it could be very helpful in so many ways, because especially for immigration. Mm-hmm. and all the other stuff that is happening here could probably bring our crime rate down and other things. And the thing with us here in the island, we need to try not to go so much in a negative pattern when we are trying to better the country, because I guess a small example, Sterling, right, and Mr. Chris, when they was fixing the road up there by Hurley's, everybody was saying, oh, we can't turn into Hurley's, or we want to turn into Hurley's like we did before. What it is to drive five more seconds to turn into Hurley's. Everybody wants to cut into the closest point to get where they want to go. When you're in America and you miss your exit, your entrance, you got to go and drive until you get another one. Mm-hmm. You understand? So I just want to know if this gentleman could answer these questions for me in a way, shape, or form. And thank you for me being so ignorant.
Okay. Well, right. No, thank you. Your questions, well, I believe they're very helpful. And
definitely.
Mr. Perito,
Well, no, thank you very much for the questions. I will do my best. Your first question is, are ID cards a good or a bad thing for the Cayman Islands? And that's not a question really for me to answer. I think what I would like to achieve is to pass on the information that has come out of my review and my client's consideration and the Christian Association's consideration of these bills, because it's not always easy to read a piece of draft legislation. I've been trained, I've 20 years experience of looking at bills and looking at primary legislation, secondary legislation. So it's something that's quite easy for me to achieve, but that might be not the case for everybody. So what I wanted to try and achieve today is to pass on the information that I've been able to ascertain, my clients have ascertained, and that's for the public to make their own decisions as to whether they think it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's certainly, I don't have an axe to grind today to try and convince people that this legislation is good or bad. I would like the public to be able to make their own view based on what I've said, and some of the information that is contained within the bill. So you mentioned the point about what information might be on the card, and it talks about your name, your immigration status, things of that nature. We've all seen a nice picture of what the card might look like with a QR code and a chip, and that this might be useful. And you mentioned there that might be useful to for somebody to establish their immigration status or to assist the police in detecting crime. But one has to just take a step back, and a point I would ask people to consider is, if the registration of persons is going to be voluntary, if you were somebody who was breaching immigration laws or was in the business of breaking other laws, you were a criminal, would you think to yourself, I know I'm going to register voluntarily for that card? Or would you think, you know what, I'm probably going to steer clear of it? So one then has to ask the question, if people, perhaps people engaged in activities that one would want to see discouraged, have a voluntary choice to register or not, would that have any material impact upon the prevention of crime or the enforcement of immigration controls? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm just going to pose that question. It's for people to make their own mind.
All right. A couple of other questions to ask. We do have a caller, I'm told, as well. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. How are you?
Not bad. I'd like to thank your guest for coming on and talking about this issue. Having a national digital ID card is not going to increase the effectiveness of fighting crime, because we already have means of identification. For example, let's say someone unlawfully comes into the island by boat because they're bringing drugs and guns from a neighboring country unlawfully. If the police are going to capture them, first of all, they would have to come in contact with them. And if they do come in contact with them, the next question that the police could ask is, well, where's your passport? And so you don't need a national ID or digital ID to do that. What you need is good police work, which is a completely different subject. But what we're not addressing with this bill are the cons. Because when I listen to the government, all I hear is the pros, and the people who are supporting it, I hear the pros, and I know what the pros are too. In fact, those who argue against the things that I'm raising as concerns will say, well, there'll always be late adopters.
Yeah. Hello, caller? Yeah. Sorry, some of lost our caller.
Okay.
Wasn't intentional, even knowing on this side, so if he's able to facilitate. All right. But as you share, there are some other points that you were sort of helping us to appreciate, Chris.
Well, I think the caller there made an interesting point, because we're looking, what we're being told is this is what the bill is all about. It's those reasons that I've talked about. Putting to one side the ability in the future to extend the purposes by regulation, and I think I've made that point. Looking at those key things, one of the other considerations that's valid, I mean, whenever one considers a new law or a new policy, it's necessary to really look at what the benefits are, what the pros are, what the cons are. And with any scheme like this, it comes at a cost, a financial cost. And the financial cost that I read reported was $8 million for establishing this scheme, which is a sizable amount of money. Looking at question, is this the best way of spending that $8 million, or could it be spent in other ways? Again, that's not a question for me to ask, for me to answer, but exactly how will a voluntary register assist with these identified purposes? And that's, I think, a valid question to be raised.
Right. Chris, the caller was just on. We're now able to reconnect.
Perfect.
Apologies again, not quite sure what happened, but welcome back.
Maybe it was my sex. All right, so some of the criticisms is that there are late adopters and afraid of technology and don't understand technology. In fact, I consider myself to be an advanced user of technology. I'm not afraid of technology. I understand what the pros are. But it seems that we have discovered an issue with which there are only pros and there are no cons, because I don't hear anybody talking about, I don't hear the government talking about the cons. And there's no language in those bills that protect us from the potential abuses. All right? And most of the potentials for abuse are political. Not just from this government, but future government. And if I had the time, I could rattle off many reasons why you should be concerned. But I want to raise one particular point, which is my understanding of the bill is that the identification code will be public information. Is that your understanding, sir?
Well, I think if we just look at this is part 21 of the bill, and this is an area where I think clarification is required to assist. And I think one of the reasons why it's the view of the Christian Association that the consultation process should be extended. We're understanding some of the key pillars, but when we start getting into the detail, every point generates a question, and then we need a response to that question. And dealing with the identification code, what is set out, paragraph 21, is a registered person may use that person's identification code for the purposes of authenticating that person's identity. But goes on, subsection 2, the identification code may be used, held, or maintained by a private entity or public authority for any purpose referred to under section 3.1 and in accordance with the Act. So linking back to those purposes that I've just described, but also having to include that any other purpose prescribed by regulation. So could this law, if enacted in its current form, could that create a situation where private entities can maintain, so that means hold, manipulate information based on an identification code? We don't know the answer to that, but certainly on a reading of the draft clause as it's set out, what is meant by the word maintained? That certainly means more than just simply using, doesn't it? And I think a question is validly raised in respect of that provision, particularly when it involves, I think this is the important thing that the gentleman on the phone was raising, this is a private entity. So this isn't the government, this is a private entity having these abilities.
Yeah, and I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time, but I want to say the point that the identification code, I understand why they want an identification code, because in database management there's this concept of entity integrity. But like everything, there are pros and there are cons, and I don't see any provision in this bill that deals with the cons that's associated with a private entity, which means any business or individual outside of government. Okay? That's what it means. And if you disagree with that, please say so. And there are no protections there, and there ought to be. And we need to have a proper consultation. This idea of having 28 days to think about something that is so complex is nonsense. The consultation should take place prior to the 28 days, and then after we've come to some sort of consensus about how to deal with issues, not just on this bill, then a final draft should be published, given 28 days for any fine-tuning that might need to take place. What's needed in these bills are major surgery. And I think the government should withdraw these bills from the legislative agenda so that we could have reasonable discussion about how to deal with things that will have profound, lasting impact on our lives individually. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing too. And we do have some other calls, but anything, Mr. Barry?
Well, I think just to answer the definition, just absolutely right. Private entity means a natural legal person that's not a public entity, so pretty much anybody else. I think it's absolutely, I think, as I said really at the opening of the show, the view that this is important stuff. This has the potential to require or to use private information, things that are constitutionally protected, our right to a private and family life. So it isn't something that should be given away. And I think really just what I wanted to do just before we move on is I think it's a really, really, really nice choice of words that was used. And in the context of similar proposed legislation in Jamaica, the government of Jamaica were passing bills, for the most part, in similar terms to those that have been proposed in these bills. And ultimately, it went to the Supreme Court, a full-sitting Supreme Court in Jamaica, in the case of Robinson and the Attorney General of Jamaica. And in the context of this, what was said, and this is the important thing that maybe people need to think about, it's the right to choose whether or not to share personal information, which individual liberty in a free and democratic state jealously guards. The mandatory nature of the requirements, as well as the breadth of its scope and the absence of a right to opt out, are not justified or justifiable in a free and democratic society. So that's what the Chief Justice had to say, Chief Justice Brian Sykes, in the judgment of Robinson. It's what has to be beared in mind is there's certain rights that we enjoy that are so important that steps have to be taken to consider the importance of protection and really their status in the grand scheme of things. And I think that has to be remembered, regardless of looking at individual things like a shiny new ID card. What are the important principles?
All right. I believe you have opportunity for maybe one more call. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
You just touched on the cost, which is if we believe what the government says that the population is 70,000. I'd worked out the other day, that's $115 per person to issue this card. The question I have, and we know how these things go, we've had the camera scandals, we've had other scandals that go on, the license plate scandals and all that. When these new things are coming in, it seems like all kinds of people benefit financially, and some black holes that they go down into with government, with these expenditures. I don't think that we should be forced into, for government, spending $115 out of my money that they have collected from me coercively to put into this, that at the end of the day, what I'm doing is giving them the authority and giving them the ability to track my every movement. Tie that in with when they make us a cashless society, with everything that I buy, they're going to be able to track and see every product that I purchase at a supermarket or park store or wherever I go. And the intrusiveness of governance into society gets more offensive and oppressive because people that are in there that we have as politicians. We have some wicked, wicked, wicked players from time to time that have been in ours as well as other places. And we have no protection against them. They now have the Royal Cayman Islands Army, founded unlawfully in the island. The law came after they had it. And, you know, government keeps convincing me that I can't trust them. Governance teaches me that. They pass legislation to take away my rights to go to the beach. Then they want to amend it to make it even more convenient and easy. And then when you try to get legal aid, they say access to the beaches is not in the public interest in the Cayman Islands. Okay. And so I bring this out because to support this, you would have to say, I trust the government. I trust our governance system. And I do not trust our governance system in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. As Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, I can trust what I can verify. And unfortunately, the government, since we brought in freedom of information, they have tried to do whatever they can to withhold information. They do not publish. They have private telephones and email addresses. They violate every day the National Archive law. Even the Auditor General reports that I can't say no more about this subject or that subject because the records don't exist to tell me what was the process to arrive at the decisions that were made to do what actions the government did several times. Mm-hmm. No, and that's over a period of 15, 20 years, different Auditor General. And so the lawlessness of government, rule of law only exists in print. And then they're asking me to trust what they're going to do with the information when they even have an election system that is secret. Mm-hmm. They can know who I voted for in every election. Mm-hmm. And so these are some fundamental flaws. And then by which laws come to the Legislative Assembly is a mockery of democracy. Yeah. Because all of these discussions should have taken place before. Don't wait until you find a bill and we're going to have a committee-stage amendment. Right. That is a screwed-up system of process for legislation. Yeah.
Just a bit. Thank you, sir, for sharing our thoughts. Mr. Perry?
Well, I think one of the points there that was echoing in the caller's message was one of trust. And I think what these bills do is ask Parliament to place a considerable amount of trust in the government. Now, not just this government, any future government. And if one looks at the powers that are delegated and the abilities for the legislation to change from its current form into something quite different, that is significant. And maybe we're in a society where simply we don't need to give that amount of trust. We can give the powers that are required for the proposed steps that are today, if they're necessary, if they're reasonable. But do we really want to trust a future government? Is it possible to trust a future government? A government in 30 years' time, we don't even know who they are. So how can we trust them? It's a valid question, I think.
But as you share that, I'm thinking that there may be some people who perhaps don't appreciate what you're sharing, and that this legislation isn't today, isn't about this government or about this time. If it's passed, laws become laws until they're amended. They'll be on our books. We saw, as an example, labor legislation that dated back, to a century. Yeah. That was in a currency that we no longer use. So unless they're amended and updated, they're the law of the land.
Yeah, well, just because these powers are there, it doesn't mean that the powers would be used. Mm-hmm. And just because the powers are used, it doesn't mean that they would be abused. But looking at, and I think it'd be useful if listeners were engaged and decided to look at Clause 45. It's right at the end of the bill. Mm-hmm. And this is some additional powers that are reserved to Cabinet. So in 45 subsection 3, that regulations again, these can be made by Cabinet, do not have to have the scrutiny of Parliament. They can make different provisions in relation to different cases or different circumstances. They can apply in respect of particular persons or particular cases or particular categories of persons or particular categories of cases, and defined the categories by reference to any circumstances of any kind. We see the word any quite often here, and any is such a broadly encompassing word. Perhaps the final one, it can, by regulation, create an offence punishable on summary conviction in summary court by a fine of up to $20,000 or to imprisonment for a term of 2 years, or to both. Some real power there.
A summary conviction.
Summary conviction.
Yeah. Which, now with that, as we close, and hopefully we'll have other opportunities, But
I hope so.
Yeah. Are there, or is there maybe one other point, anything else you want to share that maybe with this legislation or just generally to the public?
I think the general point that I think I'd like to highlight is that this consultation has closed now. The matter is due now. It remains in the current parliamentary agenda. It's evident from what we're seeing from the callers that have called in today, but the feedback that I've received and that the Christian Association have received is that this is an ongoing matter, that the month period of consultation just simply isn't long enough for a piece of legislation of this importance, but particularly in circumstances where there's already been announcements of substantial changes, and so we just don't know what that looks like, so we can't comment on it. Anyone who's listening to the show today might think, oh, actually, I've got a view. I didn't realise that. I didn't understand that could be a thing. I would like to tell the relevant stakeholders of my view. Well, that consultation's closed. The opportunity's gone. And so that's why I think that the message on behalf of the Christian Association is that the bills should be withdrawn from the current parliamentary agenda, to republish the amendments and to have greater opportunity for genuine public engagement with the process. And I think that's what I'd like to end on today.
Thank you for that. And thanks for taking the time to help us from the legal perspective to understand it. Hopefully, people would have seen not just your own professionalism, but objectivity. You and I guess your colleague at the bar, Mr. Jackson, last week, just talking to the law. This is what it says. You said that he did. Shall in law means, like it is in the Bible, thou shall not. It's a very operative, clear word, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Is the word, I think, as I've said at the end, any. Any further, any other, and that is a very broad, encompassing word as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think more of us as ordinary people need to appreciate that legal drafting and when it comes to the law interpretation, a word isn't just a word; it has particular import.
It does.
Well, Mr. Fair, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and thank you to Miss Anglin for a very kind introduction, and for all of your callers joining in as well.
Indeed. Well, to our listeners, we want you to come back and be informed, perhaps if it's not inappropriate, picking up on what Mr. Perry shared. The consultation period is closed, but we still have our members of Parliament that we can share with them. We support it, our concerns. I'm sure they're very receptive and want to be consulted by their constituents, so reach out to them.
Absolutely.
And that would be helpful to them and to us. All right, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Tomorrow, come back for more Talk Today, and until then, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square, and